Air France Flight 447 was scheduled to depart from Rio de Janeiro at 8 p.m. local time, 11 p.m. Paris time. The cockpit crew consisted of 3 pilots: the captain, who was 58 years old; the first officer, who was 32 years old; the relief pilot, who was 37 years old. The weather conditions were reported as favorable in Rio de Janeiro and in Paris. However, the en route weather, specifically the conditions along the flight path, appeared more complex. The flight was planned to cross the Intertropical Convergence Zone, ITCZ, a region known for intense thunderstorm activity, where storms can reach altitudes of 60,000 feet. The aircraft operating as Air France Flight 447 was an Airbus A330 that had been delivered to Air France in 2005. As Flight 447 progressed on its journey, the crew received a message indicating thunderstorm activity along their route. To enhance visibility and reduce cockpit distractions during the red-eye flight, the first officer dimmed the lights. At 1:59 Coordinated Universal Time, the captain left the cockpit to start his scheduled rest period. As planned, the relief pilot transitioned to the role of pilot monitoring, taking over the non-flying pilot duties. Despite the ongoing discussion about the weather and observed turbulence, there was no indication or discussion among the pilots about deviating from their planned flight path to avoid the worst of the weather. At 2 hours 6 minutes and 5 seconds Coordinated Universal Time, the first officer made an announcement to the cabin crew, informing them of turbulence ahead. In response to the intensifying weather, at 2 hours 7 minutes and 52 seconds Coordinated Universal Time, the relief pilot adjusted the weather radar gain to its maximum setting. Shortly, at 2 hours 8 minutes and 3 seconds, he suggested turning left to potentially avoid the core of the storm. The first officer made a course adjustment to the left. At 2 hours 8 minutes and 17 seconds Coordinated Universal Time, the sound of rain impacting the cockpit windshield became audible, indicating that the aircraft was entering a more intense weather area. At 2 hours 8 minutes and 37 seconds, the precipitation intensified, changing from rain to the sound of ice crystals striking the aircraft. In response to the worsening turbulence, the first officer, as per standard operating procedures, reduced the aircraft speed to Mach 0.8. Amidst the unusual sensor readings, a series of contradictory call-outs began in the cockpit. At 2 hours 10 minutes and 5 seconds, the first officer, experiencing disorientation or confusion, questioned, "Am I going down?" The relief pilot responded with, "Go down," at 2 hours 10 minutes and 7 seconds, possibly misinterpreting the first officer's question. At 2 hours 10 minutes and 8 seconds, the captain, who had returned to the cockpit, said, "Climb," likely referring to the aircraft's pitch attitude based on the instruments. Possibly misinterpreting the captain's "climb" instruction in the context of his perceived descent, the first officer made error. This action dramatically increased the aircraft speed but contradicted the correct stall recovery procedure. The nose-down pitch, instead of resolving the stall, worsened the situation. The aircraft accelerated, and a stall warning was triggered at 2 hours 10 minutes and 15 seconds, confirming the dangerous aerodynamic state. The first officer, seemingly fixated on the stall warning and potentially misinterpreting the correct response, confirmed that the engines were at toga. While applying full thrust is part of stall recovery, it must be coupled with a reduction in pitch angle. He then inquired about their altitude, at 2 hours 10 minutes and 20 seconds, indicating ongoing disorientation. The captain, realizing the severity of the situation, muttered, "It's impossible," possibly in disbelief. The pilots began to discuss the aircraft's attitude and roll control limits. At 2 hours 10 minutes and 40 seconds, the captain suggested left rudder, possibly aimed at regaining some form of control. Momentarily, the left rudder input seemed to have a positive effect, although it was not a standard recovery technique for the situation. Despite these control inputs, the aircraft continued to descend rapidly. At 2 hours 11 minutes and 6 seconds, the first officer called out, passing 10,000 feet, acknowledging their alarming descent. The relief pilot, attempting to correct the situation, called out, "I have controls," at 2 hours 11 minutes and 14 seconds and made left side stick inputs. However, the first officer did not relinquish control, resulting in conflicting inputs and triggering dual input warnings at 2 hours 11 minutes and 17 seconds. These warnings indicated that both pilots were making simultaneous and opposing control inputs, further complicating the control of the aircraft. At 2 hours 11 minutes and 21 seconds, the first officer, still seemingly confused about the aircraft's state, asked, "Why are we continuing to descend?" This question underscores the ongoing lack of situational awareness and failure to recognize the stall condition. The relief pilot, in another attempt to regain control or reset the system, instructed the captain to reset flight control computers at 2 hours 11 minutes and 24 seconds. This action, while potentially aimed at clearing faults, was not a standard procedure for stall recovery and would not address the fundamental aerodynamic issue. The relief pilot then called out, "Climb," at 2 hours 11 minutes and 28 seconds, now seemingly advocating for the correct stall recovery action of increasing pitch. However, the first officer responded, "I've been at max nose up for a while," at 2 hours 11 minutes and 31 seconds, indicating he was still pulling back on the side stick, exacerbating the stall condition. The captain, finally understanding the first officer's incorrect control inputs and their disastrous consequences, exclaimed, "No, no, no, don't climb," at 2 hours 11 minutes and 35 seconds, now trying to correct the first officer's actions. In a further sequence of conflicting actions, the relief pilot, now advocating for descent to regain airspeed, said, "Go down, down," at 2 hours 11 minutes and 38 seconds and pushed his side stick forward. However, the first officer was still pulling back, resulting in more dual input warnings at 2 hours 11 minutes and 41 seconds. Exasperated and trying to take decisive action, the relief pilot said, "Give me the controls," at 2 hours 11 minutes and 45 seconds. The first officer responded, "Go ahead, you have controls, we're still in toga," at 2 hours 11 minutes and 48 seconds, finally relinquishing control. Despite the change in control, the aircraft's nose was now lowered to 7 degrees below the horizon, airspeed began to return, and momentarily, another stall warning sounded at 2 hours 11 minutes and 52 seconds. Critically, despite having given up control, the first officer immediately pulled back on the side stick again, causing yet another dual input alert at 2 hours 11 minutes and 55 seconds. In a further attempt to manage the situation, thrust was reduced to idle and then advance forward again, actions that were not part of a recognized stall recovery procedure and likely added to the confusion. The captain, observing the continued high-pitch attitude, warned about pitching up at 2 hours 13 minutes and 3 seconds, but the relief pilot, now focused on the rapidly decreasing altitude, counted, "We need to do it, we're at 4,000 feet, at 2 hours 13 minutes and 7 seconds, believing a pitch up was necessary despite the low altitude and stalled condition. As they descended through 2,500 feet, the Ground Proximity Warning System, GPWS, issued sink rate, pull-up warnings at 2 hours 14 minutes and 4 seconds, urgently commanding a climb to avoid ground impact. In a final, fatal action, at 2 hours 14 minutes and 9 seconds, the captain then said, "Go on, pull," and both pilots simultaneously pulled maximum back on their side sticks, pitching the aircraft up to 16 degrees at 2 hours 14 minutes and 14 seconds. At this point, the aircraft was in a fully developed stall, descending at 107 knots forward speed and 107 knots downwards. At 2 hours 14 minutes and 22 seconds, in the final seconds, the first officer, in a last desperate attempt, pushed his takeover button, effectively locking out the relief pilot's controls. In a state of panic, he exclaimed, "Damn it, we are going to crash, this can't be true, and what's happening?" The captain, in a final, futile command amidst the cacophony of stall and GPWS warnings, ordered 10 degrees pitch up, at 2 hours 14 minutes and 25 seconds, still attempting to climb despite the unrecoverable situation. The relief pilot, now locked out, attempted to pitch forward but had no control authority. At 2 hours 14 minutes and 28 seconds, Air France Flight 447 crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. The Airbus A330 impacted the water at a steep 45 degrees angle and a vertical speed of 10,900 feet per minute. The force of the impact was catastrophic. The aircraft shattered upon hitting the ocean surface, and all 228 people on board perished in the crash. The investigation into the crash of Air France Flight 447 revealed that no single component failure caused the accident. Instead, the sequence of events leading to the crash was initiated by the obstruction of the pitot tubes due to ice crystal icing. This icing event, although temporary, led to a cascade of critical failures. Unreliable airspeed indications. The ice blockage of the pitot tubes resulted in unreliable and inconsistent airspeed readings displayed to the pilots. System degradations and warnings. The unreliable airspeed data triggered a series of system degradations and warnings in the cockpit, confusing the pilots and increasing their workload under stress. Autopilot and autothrust disconnections. The inconsistent airspeed readings led to the automatic disconnection of the autopilot and autothrust systems, requiring the pilots to manually fly the aircraft in already challenging conditions. Critically, despite facing unreliable airspeed indications, the crew of Flight 447 did not correctly apply the established procedure for unreliable airspeed. The pilot's initial reaction to pitch up the aircraft, likely in response to the stall warnings and confusion, led to a worsening energy state. This action further reduced airspeed and increased the angle of attack, ultimately resulting in a sustained aerodynamic stall. This lack of stall identification meant that the pilots did not apply the necessary and standard stall recovery countermeasures, which include reducing pitch angle and increasing thrust. The tragic accident of Air France Flight 447 prompted a comprehensive review of aviation safety and resulted in several critical safety recommendations aimed at preventing similar accidents in the future. These recommendations included upset prevention and recovery training, UPRT, enhanced training for pilots in recognizing and recovering from aircraft upsets, including stalls and unusual attitudes, became a priority. Revised unreliable airspeed procedures, new and clearer memory items, immediate action checklists for unreliable airspeed situations were developed. 3. Improvements to pitot probes. Efforts were made to improve the design and reliability of pitot probes to make them less susceptible to icing, particularly from ice crystals at high altitudes. 4. Enhanced stall warning systems. Further development and refinement of stall warning systems were recommended to ensure they are effective and provide clear, unambiguous warnings to pilots, even in complex failure scenarios. Search and rescue improvements. The extensive and challenging search for the wreckage and flight recorders of Flight 447 led to recommendations for improvements in international search and rescue coordination and technology. Key lessons emerged from the Air France 447 accident, emphasizing fundamental principles of aviation safety. Understanding aircraft systems. Pilots must have a thorough understanding of aircraft systems, including automation and flight control modes, and their limitations, especially in degraded modes of operation. Managing degraded systems. Training and procedures must adequately prepare pilots to manage situations where aircraft systems are degraded or providing unreliable information. High-altitude flight differences. Pilots need to be acutely aware of the unique aerodynamic characteristics of high-altitude flight, where stall margins are reduced, and recovery actions may differ from those at lower altitudes. Prioritize flying the aircraft. In any emergency or unexpected situation, the fundamental principle of aviate, navigate, communicate remains paramount. Pilots must always prioritize maintaining control of the aircraft, aviate, before attempting to troubleshoot complex problems. Pitch and power control. The mantra, pitch and power keep you safe, was reinforced. In situations of loss of control or stall, correct and timely application of pitch and power adjustments are critical for recovery. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates and detailed analyses of aviation incidents and accidents. Until next time, stay safe.